Coming up next on the Jim Master Show Celebrity Talk Show series, our very special guest, William Bernhardt, wrote this incredible book, The Superman Wars, something very special, the battle, truth, justice, the American icon. He was on Jeopardy, and he is a Jeopardy champion. Now, even though we're talking about Superman, he was a Superman that day on Jeopardy, and that's when Alex Trebek, of course, one of the great hosts in television history, was hosting. And William got to be on there, compete, and he won. He was the Jeopardy champion. We're so excited to have him here, and we're going to start right now. And welcome to the show, William. It's a pleasure to be here. Jeopardy champion.
Thanks for having me.
Superman on
I love
Jeopardy.
seeing that photo. I haven't looked at that in a long time from the
Isn't
Jeopardy
that
game.
something?
Yeah.
Before we talk about Superman, because I know that's piquing the interest of our viewers, Jeopardy, oh my God, I love that show. And you and I were just talking about Merv Griffin and Alex Trebek and all the game shows and the whole bit. How did that happen that you ended up on Jeopardy?
Well, I've always loved Jeopardy. I mean, I remember watching it when I was, say, 4 at home with my mom. And it had always been in my mind that that'd be kind of a fun thing to do, but just never got around to it. And at one point, they were doing a seniors tournament for people over 50. And I thought, well, there's my opportunity. I'll do that. And then they eliminated the seniors tournament. So I thought, well, I better just go on. So I auditioned a couple times and finally got in there. And even though I was, not to make excuses, why would I? I won. But, I was easily the oldest person in the green room by a pretty good margin. And I think I probably wasn't the quickest on the buzzer, but I survived. So, and it was so fun to actually stand on that stage and get to play the game for real,
That's amazing. I mean, what was that really like? Was the pressure on? What was the preparation? Were you getting a lot of fanfare? Did you have to lock yourself in a room so you can focus and practice? Being on Jeopardy alone is quite an accomplishment, but then get to the level of competing in the championships, that's a whole other stratosphere. What was the process like for you? And also, what was the pressure like for you? And how did you handle it?
Oh, the process is pretty streamlined these days. There's an online test, so you don't have to fly to LA just on a wing and a prayer. You take the online test, and I assume if you get a good grade, you get a call back. In my case, I got invited to New Orleans. So I went down there and went to a hotel and took another written test. And then they had everybody stand up, I think, to see if you can get through the interview without collapsing. Can you talk? And we did a little practice game with ballpoint pens instead of buzzers and questions that came up on a screen. And they took turns getting us up. When I went up, the category was sports, not really my strong suit. And I thought, oh, this is bad. But I got one. And then it switched to poetry. And I thought, yes, God loves me. This is exactly what I needed.
Right?
So I got through that.
Poetry for 200.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was more than a year later. I'd forgotten all about it. And one day I got a phone call and they said, hey, you want to come down and tape some Jeopardy? So I went down and did it, got in on a Thursday, and they do a little rehearsal before you actually play the game. And I was up there trying to do that buzzer, and I couldn't get in at all. I couldn't beat anybody up there. At one point, this is true, the producer, a nice woman, came up to me and said, Bill, are you trying to ring in? And I said, yes, I'm trying to ring in, but I'm not getting anything. So I thought, this is going to be sad. And that first section before they do the interviews, I made all kinds of mistakes. And I just could see I was going to be one of those sad sacks who gets escorted off stage, because you don't have any money to bet on Final Jeopardy. And I really was just, okay, just let me play Final Jeopardy. That's all I ask.
That's all I want. Please, just that, right?
It got better. Once we got to Double Jeopardy, where I think the questions are harder and speed is not quite as critical, although it's still pretty critical, my score improved. And then I hit some daily doubles that I was diving for and ended up pulling it out.
That's incredible. It really is. Congratulations on that. That's really quite
Yeah, and took
amazing.
some money home. You can see there.
You did. And in, 2013, a lot of money.
Yeah, back
Today,
way back then. Yeah.
that's a tank of gas.
Yes,
Uh,
exactly.
so when you won,
Mhm.
what was it like for you then? I mean, Jeopardy has a cult following. So now you're on this mantle of Jeopardy champions. The
Yeah.
Jeopardy fans know you, the TV fans know you, the game show fans know you, people that you know and love and have worked with, and, childhood friends and all. What was it like after winning?
Well, it's amazing that you can write
Yeah.
50 books or more, by I'm guessing at that point, and people are kind of, oh yeah, that's swell. But if you win Jeopardy, then you must be a smart person. I had the same experience. I did some crossword puzzles for Will Shortz in the New York Times that were published. It's the same thing. Oh, crossword puzzles, you must be a smart person. I'm like, look at all these books.
That's right. The books behind him, he's read,
Yes.
folks, or have written. A lot of times you see a lot of these kinds of conversations, and there's a shelf back there. It's green screen.
Okay.
His are real. His,
Yeah.
you touch them and they're real. Well, that's amazing. And I know the viewers, because we do have game show fans and what have you, that also watch our series, and they know everything about the game shows as well. How did the writing start for you? What was it about writing that piqued your interest early on? Were you always writing as a kid? Were you journaling? Were you doing short stories? What was the inspiration for you? And are there other writers in the family?
To the last question, that's easy. No. Mostly a family of medical and scientific sorts. I don't know why, I went bad and, and decided I was going to be a writer. My mom says that when I was 7, at least, I was running around saying I was going to be a writer. At first, I wanted to be a librarian because that's where the books lived. And at some point, I realized that these books aren't just spontaneously generated. This is somebody's job. And I thought, well, that's the job I want. I want to make up stories and write books and stuff. So I started thinking about that. And when you're living in a small town in Oklahoma, that's that's not the standard thing you say when people ask what you want to be when you grow up. But that's what I kept saying, and people would nod their heads and say, "Oh, no, yeah, sure." But I just wrote and sent things. I got my first rejection letter when I was 11, which I can prove because I've still got it, and
At
a
11.
lot more than
So
I
that's
got
when
afterwards.
you
Yeah.
developed a thick skin at 11.
Which is
Absolutely.
good, honestly,
Yes, it
because
is.
even when I was college and beyond college, I was still sending things out and getting rejected. And, honestly, there's a reason that stuff was getting rejected. It wasn't very good, but
In
that's how you
retrospect,
learn. You think, okay,
right?
that didn't work. I got to try something else. I got to make it better. And if you keep
Exactly.
sticking with it, that's why I say you were nice enough to mention the annual writers conference. I do WriterCon. One of the things I always say is talent, good thing for writers to have, but honestly, not that uncommon. Perseverance, that is uncommon. If you're the
That
kind of
is
person who can sit through 10 years of rejection and still keep your eyes on the prize and keep sending things out there, that's the person I know is going to be published. I don't know exactly
right.
when or
Right.
where or how, but you keep at it long enough, you'll get
Yeah,
there.
exactly. It's kind of sort of like a life lesson, right? That could apply to so many aspects of life. Just believe in yourself, surround yourself with supportive people, and keep at it. You'll get rejections, you'll get no's, you'll get maybes. But as long as you believe in yourself and you hone your skills and continue to move forward, knowing it's a real deep seated passion, it's something you
Yeah.
not only want to do, but you have to do, you'll find ways to make it happen, which you have as well. Now, when you were a kid, were you fascinated with Superman, Spider-Man, Batman? Did you watch the TV shows, the cartoons, all of it? Was that something that was part of your world too?
Yeah, well, I read everything in sight and I loved comic books and Superman in particular. That's why this book is a passion project to me. I don't really know why, because we're talking late 60s, 70s. So all the cool kids were reading Marvel, Spider Man, and the X-Men and those guys. But I liked Superman. And eventually, once they got past the Adam West phase of trying to do comedy and went back to his sort of more Dark Knight
Burgess
roots,
Meredith. Wah, wah,
yeah,
wah.
once I got all that out of the, I mean, it worked briefly on television. It never worked on the comic books at all, but they finally got over that and got more serious things. But Superman was my guy, and I loved reading those stories. I remember I was too late for the George Reeves series. I've seen it now, of course, in retrospect, but
Oh,
there was
yeah.
a cartoon series when I was very young, New Adventures of Superman. It was
And
called
New
Filmation.
Adventures. Right.
So
Yep.
obviously,
I remember that.
very limited animation, but I love those. I watched, well, of course, I watched them over and over again. There were probably only 13 episodes that they just played over and over again
They did,
every
right?
Saturday morning.
And kids
Those,
watched them.
that's right. I love, and a few years ago, they re-released all of those on DVD. So of course, I got the box set, put it in. Wow,
Amazing.
unwatchable. I mean,
Now, right?
yeah,
Exactly.
now,
I mean,
even by another 5-year-old, I think nobody's watching this. This is,
it is
wow,
amazing
too
with
primitive.
some of these series, how they, even like with Batman, we had Burt Ward on the show too, and he talked
Oh,
about
yeah.
how crazy being on the series was and some of the dangerous stunts and what they had to go through. The Batmobile almost crashing when they were driving it fast and all these things they wanted them to do. And but Cesar Romero and Burgess Meredith as the Penguin, Cesar Romero as Joe, some of the people that they brought in, these amazing, legendary talents. And do you remember the episode of I Love Lucy where
Yes.
George Reeves was on it as
I already
Superman
know where
because
you're going. Yes.
Lucy wanted to top Carolyn Appleby's kids' birthday party, so she promised that Superman would be at Little Ricky's party.
That's a great, great
Little Ricky,
episode.
Keith Thibodeau, has been here on the show and he verified
Really?
that. That was a fun episode. She's out on the ledge and it's just really. So, what was the fascination enough about this story, which
Hmm.
is not that we've had a couple of different guests on who have written books or there's various things they've done in reference to Superman.
Hmm.
Um, this is something very different. This goes pretty deep about the creator and some of the things that happened along the way, and a gentleman who people today, it might not be on the tip of their tongue as far as who
Sure.
created Superman, this beloved character all these years, but you took a real deep dive and intensive and extensive and exhaustive research to figure all this out, legalese, I mean, everything, but
Right.
presented in layman's terms for people to understand and still appreciate the story. What was it about Superman and this particular story and the creator that fascinated you enough to create
Hmm.
the Superman Wars?
Well, this book is about Superman's originator, Jerry Siegel. He was the guy who was a kid, teenager in Cleveland during the Depression who came up with the idea for Superman and then got his best friend, Joe Shuster, to draw it. Jerry wrote it, Joe drew it, and they came up with the world's first superhero, which created a whole new genre and also gave credence to this brand new thing called comic books, which had just debuted in 35, but hadn't really had a hit yet until Superman came along and was a major hit. And Jerry spent years and years talk about being rejected. See, this is why I'm writing about Jerry. It's a story I can
There's a
relate to.
theme you can relate to, right?
Yeah, not that I created Superman or anything, but I get what it's like to be a writer and want to be published more than anything else, but you just can't make it happen. And you mentioned earlier that I've been a writer advocate and strong believer in writers. That's almost redundant. Writers' rights, but Jerry Siegel was the first American writer to sue his publisher. He was literally this first person to stand up against his publisher, stand up for his own rights. And in the short term, it didn't go very well for him, but he stood up. and fought and wouldn't take it. And that's what I admire. You probably already know a lot of this. Jerry Siegel, at that time in the 30s, newspaper strips, comic strips were the big deal. Everybody wanted a newspaper strip because they were so popular. At one point during a newspaper strike in the 30s, Mayor LaGuardia in New York read the comic strips over the radio so kids wouldn't miss out on an
Yes.
installment of Little Orphan Annie.
LaGuardia.
That's
Right.
how popular they were, and that's what Jerry wanted. He couldn't get it. He kept sending Superman out, kept sending it out. People couldn't see it. They didn't like the art, or they thought there's a guy holding a car over his head. Yeah, sure. That nobody's going to read that. Some of the problem might have been that the creators were clearly very Jewish. It is not a coincidence that the early comic book field is completely dominated by Jewish creators and editors and business people, because according to Jules Pfeiffer, this brand new kind of scruffy, low rent arena called the comic books was wide open in a way that other markets weren't. Anyway, Jerry can't get a newspaper strip, so eventually he let Superman be published by a guy he knew, Major Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, who basically invented the modern comic book. And Jerry and Joe had done other features for him, and the Major wanted to run Superman back in 35, but Jerry said, no, I want to get into the newspapers. Only when they've all rejected him does he tell the Major that, okay, I'll let Superman run in your new comic book. What Jerry didn't know, what nobody knew till it happened, was that two other guys, two business sharks, Harry Donenfeld and his business associate accountant Jack Leibowitz, had entered into a partnership with the Major, which eventually led to them, by dubiously legal means, taking over the company. And that happens like, relative minutes, like just a few weeks before Action Comics comes out with the first Superman hit. So new owners and new tactics. Jerry trusted the Major because he was a writer too, and he treated his writers well. He only bought first serial rights. He didn't try and own characters. Harry and Jack, that was a whole different story. And so Jerry gets this letter agreement, which unfortunately he signs. You hear this myth sometime that Siegel and Schuster sold Superman for $130. That's not really true. They got $130 because they were getting $10 a page for a 13-page story.
Right.
But the release had another clause later on that said, by the way, all the rights to all the characters and features herein go to the company. There's no money attached to that at all. So you could literally say they sold Superman for nothing. But Jerry did sign the piece of paper, and it was the biggest mistake he ever made, and he regretted it the rest of his life.
That's why you need to know and have people around you that know what they're doing, and business people and all. And remember in the early years, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, they were building Desilu and buying studios and creating all these TV shows, and they sold off I Love Lucy to CBS, and CBS still owns it to this day.
Wow.
Paramount, and they sold it off to get the money to buy, RKO Studios and all these others, to put the money in as they were growing the Desilu, enterprise, and producing Star Trek and Mission Impossible and all these incredible shows. Yeah. But now today, they don't own, the family doesn't own I Love Lucy. They own Here's Lucy and the Lucy Show and the Lucy and Desi Image and all of that, with Desilu 2, which is Lucy Arnaz and Desi Arnaz Jr. But not I Love Lucy. That's CBS Paramount.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it was the same thing with Superman. So Action Comics #1 comes out in April of 38. We're still in the Depression, looming war in Europe, hard times. And here comes this superpowered, as Jerry says in the first story, champion of the weak and oppressed. Truth, justice, they will later say, and the American way, except his creators got none of the above. And it's an immediate hit. sells like comic books have never sold before. In the first 2 years, there are more than 200 merchandising licenses for Superman stuff, but Jerry and Joe are getting very little of that relative. I mean, they did make some money in the early years, but it didn't last, and it was never 1% of what Superman was making for these suits, who really had nothing to do with it. Harry Donenfeld saw it and laughed. He thought it was stupid. Jack Leibowitz was an accountant, but a year later, they're millionaires, and Jerry and Joe are not. So Jerry gets the hit he always wanted. He gets the newspaper strip because Superman is in the newspapers next year, but he doesn't own it anymore. He's working for someone else. And this is in the book, of course, but there's 10 years of correspondence. It's not all in the book, I promise, but there's 10 years of correspondence between Jack and Jerry. And Jack is just abusive. He's just mean. He's cruel. He's demanding. He takes advantage of these young men's obvious business naivete, their lack of advisors or anybody to help them out, and just runs them through the ringer. But the worst comes in 43. Jerry is drafted. It's World War II. He serves his country overseas for a couple of years. While he's gone, Jack, who's now running the company day to day, doing the day-to-day operations, he not only takes over the whole Superman operation, including even bringing Jerry's pal Joe in-house. Joe had eyesight problems, so he was 4F during World War II. So he takes over the whole Superman operation, and worse, he uses the script that Jerry had written for a character called Superboy, slightly different anyway. He's, his Superman when he's younger and he's in a rural setting and he's playing pranks on people and stuff. And Jerry had presented that to them, hoping to have a new feature, and Jack rejected it several times. But then, when Jerry's overseas and can't do anything about it, he has a script illustrated and runs it, and it's successful, so they turn that into a series. So Jerry comes back from the war to find, for one thing, he's got massive debts, and for another, this guy's not only taken over Superman, they've run his Superboy script, which they had no even color of right to. They hadn't bought it, but they ran it, and he tries to work something out, but it never happened. So in 1947, he files suit. He wins some money as to Superboy. He does not get the rights back to Superman, but more importantly, they fire him. Fire he and Joe both. They supposedly had a 10-year employment agreement, which had not expired, but they still fired him. And worse, they removed Jerry and Joe's name from the credits. They removed their creator credit from the feature. Before that, every episode, every issue of Superman had created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, but they eliminated that. Even when they reprinted old stories that had appeared before, they'd color over the names so you couldn't see who did it. I mean, that's just petty. That doesn't help the company in any way. That's just spiteful. So now Jerry's out of work. He's got some money, but it's not going to last forever. He's finding he's basically been blackballed in the New York comic community, and that leads to several decades of really hard times for the guy who has created this billion-dollar character.
That's really incredible. And the research that you did for the book was, I said, exhaustive, finding out about the mobster tactics, the decades-long courtroom drama, and new witnesses, unpublished manuscripts, personal letters, and more, revealing this complex and dramatic story of Superman creator Jerry Siegel. It sort of is kind of like, as you've referenced, a David and Goliath clash with the twists, the turns, the devastating upheavals. But almost 80 years after the character first appeared, eventually reclaimed?
Well, no, I can't say reclaimed. Some people listening to this will probably remember in 1975 when there was a big PR campaign to get Jerry and Joe pensions. Let me point out, first of all, that didn't come from the courts. That certainly didn't come from corporations. That happened because of fans. Jerry had written this 9-page he called it a press release. I would call it a long rant. Although everything he says in it checks out. He's read in the newspaper that there's going to be a big budget Superman movie, which will star Christopher Reeve, of course, and that they've paid Mario Puzo $600,000 to write the screenplay. And Jerry's just outraged. They're paying this Godfather mafia guy all this money. Hey, I'm right here. I created the character. And his outrage inspires him to write this long press release. He makes 1,000 copies, sends them all around everywhere. Crickets. Doesn't hear anything from anybody, no major media, until finally it's not the media, the mass media, it's fans who take on to the story. Because by the 70s, we have this whole growing community of adult comic book collectors, people who love comics and take it seriously and want to know more about the writers and artists who created this wonderful stuff. And that's where Jerry's story first appears in some of these, they called them fanzines. They still do. Some, circulations of like 20 or 30 copies. And, try tracking that down. That can be tricky too. But they pick up the story, and eventually the East Coast press picks it up, the Washington Post, and then they were making appearances on TV. And eventually they do get a pension from DC Comics of, wait for it, $20,000 a year. That's about what they were paying their, what they then called secretaries, assistants. That's what they're giving the creators of Superman. Just to put this in perspective.
Kind of amazing that that's the actual figure, considering.
Yeah, that's what I made in 20 minutes on Jeopardy. That's great. I hadn't thought about that. No, but to put this in perspective, today, Warner Brothers is the parent company of DC Comics. At least so far, it may be Paramount next week.
Paramount, Warner.
But at any rate, right now,
no more Acme Incorporated.
Yeah, right. Superman alone makes about $450 million a year for this company on average, whether there's a movie or not.
Whether there's
toys and games and underoos, and they gave Superman's creators $20,000 a year. Well, there would be later cost of living increases, mostly because Jerry's wife pushed and pushed and pushed for them. But it was so paltry. Let me just say, anybody listening to this, if you're thinking, oh, I remember that back in 75 when they got pensions, so I already know this story, you so don't. Because there's 50 more years of acrimonious back and forth.
Right.
Jerry to the day he dies, and then his wife takes it up, and then his daughter takes it up.
When did he pass?
He passed in 96, but his wife, Joanne, who, by the way, could you write this any better? She was the original model for Lois Lane. She'd grown up in Cleveland too, and she posed for Joe Shuster when he was trying to figure out what Lois would look like. And so then she picks it up. Warner Brothers is handling the litigation. In the 21st century, the litigation has to do with a revision of the Copyright Act by Congress, which gives creators the right, under some circumstances, to recover their work after 50 years, no matter what they've done to it. Signed it, sold it, whatever. You can get back after 50 years, usually. Of course.
Different than what people think when they think public domain is a forever situation, right?
Right. Well, after 95 years, public domain kicks in. But anyway, so that gave them an opening, which Jerry did not want to pursue during his lifetime. He said, they'll fire me. They'll kill the pension. And he's right. They would have. But after he passed, Joanne said, nah, we're doing this. And she filed a lawsuit and got good people to represent her. Jerry had always been outlawyered before, but she found the real deal. And they just drag it out. When she is 93 years old, they notice her for her third deposition. You know what a deposition is. You sit there and answer questions. It's not fun. And then she passes, and their daughter Laura takes over. Their daughter Laura, who I just have to say, since Jerry was the model for Clark Kent and Joanne was the model for Lois, and they marry, what does their daughter become? a reporter, of course,
Of course.
award-winning reporter. It's, you couldn't write it better. Anyway, she takes over the lawsuit, and that goes all the way to 2016 until they finally reach an accommodation. Does the Siegel family get the rights to the character back? No, but they do get a good, decent settlement, which at least acknowledges their existence. And they got a permanent credit restored. You pick up a Superman comic today, and it will say somewhere, Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family, which to me honors the family that stuck together and fought for decades for what they believed was their artistic work.
Why did you feel compelled to tell the story and write the book? What was it about? Do you tend to root for the underdog? What is it about it that gravitated to you to the point of, I'm going to devote a lot of time and resources to make sure this story gets out there?
Well, to me, this is a cautionary tale. This is, as I have said many times this year, don't let what happened to Jerry Siegel happen to you. And as you mentioned, I do a lot of writer education things like the WriterCon conference and some smaller programs. Every year I introduce the conference, and one of the first things I say is, hey, I know you're here to see sessions and meet agents and all that kind of stuff, and you should. But while you're here, meet people. Look around you, make friends, because I know I'm talking to about a bunch of writers, and they're probably mostly introverts, and they'd rather be in the library. But force yourself, because there's no reason to be shy. This is your tribe. They all want the same thing you do. And look, even if you don't know it yet, there's going to come a time when you need to talk to someone. You need to say, I don't know, should I sign this? Or is this a real publisher or a vanity press?
Right.
Is this a real offer or some AI slop? And you need to know friends, and that you need to know, helpful to have an agent like Jerry never did, or a lawyer to advise you on a contract. But so many questions going to be answered if you're just tied into people who are also in the same arena and have the same hopes and dreams, and you might need a critique group later on, or beta readers. So meet people and don't let this happen to you, because let me tell you, this conflict between art and commerce, these vultures who are very eager to take advantage of somebody else's intellectual property, they're still out there.
Now you have artificial intelligence and things of that nature. It's a whole other arena, right, coming in?
Yeah. Well, nobody knows where AI is going, but I know every morning I have to wade through about 10 or 15 emails that seem very convincing, and they want either my contact info or my money. And, some this morning we're talking about the Superman wars, and they knew all about it. So the AI has either scraped my book or scraped some interviews that I did and put that into these, sham emails. But everybody gets them. My little sister, she's a physician, not a writer, but she texted me 2 days ago and said, I got this letter. Is this for real? And I texted back, no, throw it away. These scams are out there.
I love the calls you get about the offer to pay off your student loan. And I'm like, really? Where were you years ago?
Yeah, when I needed that loan. Yeah, I keep getting.
Don't you get your facts straight? You're a little late on that one.
Yeah, my texts are all about, I've been pre-approved for that loan you've been wanting.
Yes,
and I'm like,
it's always $58,000, right?
is that it?
I didn't $700 a month for the next 500 years.
If I didn't have to pay it back, I'd be interested, but I suspect that I would.
Exactly. But you've been writing for a long time. This isn't your first trip around the moon, for sure.
This is my 67th published book.
That's unbelievable.
I think, unless I lost track somewhere.
Known also for the best-selling Ben Kincaid novels and the Daniel Pike legal thriller series. Tell us a little about some of the other works for people who are excited about the Superman wars, the Superman fans, the entertainment fans, the movie, the TV fans, what have you, comic book fans, but they're now wanting to learn a little bit more about some of your additional work that you're already known for?
Right. Well, I'm probably best known for the novels, a lot of them thrillers, legal thrillers, using as I am technically a lawyer, even though I haven't practiced in a very long time. And those have
Well,
been very
people
good to
probably
me.
ask you for advice all the time, right?
Yeah,
Still, even family, friends, neighbors.
that's absolutely true. Well, if I can help, then wonderful. If I can help, it's not always possible, but and I've written some historical novels that I'm really proud of. Wrote a book called The Florentine Poet. That's probably my best effort, I suspect. Volumes of poetry, which, you know, how can I put it? Gave me some of the best reviews of my career, not the best royalty statements of my career, but I'm glad I did it. And it was really when I was doing the last of those Daniel Pike legal thrillers. FYI, that series starts with a book called The Last Chance Lawyer. And the last one, so far anyway, was Justice for All. And it also dealt with a kind of art versus commerce conflict, and that's what got me thinking about Siegel and Schuster, because I kind of knew that story, but not very well. I knew there was a lot of litigation, so I started looking into it and couldn't find a really good explanation of what took so long. I mean, from 47 to 2016, that's almost 70 years. I had some
Right.
trials that went a long time too, but they didn't go 70 years. And so I thought, well, this is something maybe I could look into. And since I have a legal background, maybe I can explain it in a way that lay readers would understand. But of course, a book that was just lawsuits would be boring. That's a few chapters, and you need to know the people. That's why I wrote it from Jerry's viewpoint primarily, because I wanted you to understand not just what happened, but why it happened.
Right.
And to understand that, you need to understand the guy who was behind it from the start, Jerry Siegel.
Why do you think there's still a fascination and love for everything Superman even
Mhm.
today?
Well, he's a great character. He was from the start, and as more writers have come on board, he's just gotten more interesting and more involved. Jerry was writing during the Depression, so his Superman was very much like an FDR New Deal crusader. He is the reverse of Flash Gordon, who comes from Earth but goes someplace else to fix their problems. Superman comes from somewhere else here to fix our problems. In that very first story in Action Comics #1, in 13 pages, he stops a spouse abuser. Prevents an innocent woman from being executed. He, of course, rescues Lois from kidnappers. He stops war profiteers. And that's in the first 13 pages. In subsequent stories, he'll deal with more and more of the things that are going on in Jerry's world, which was a difficult world, especially when you're the poor Jewish kid who's not very popular at school and can't get a date.
Right.
That's the birth of the whole Clark Kent, Lois, and Superman. It's like a love triangle where one guy is two sides of the triangle, but she doesn't know it because he changes costume every now and again. And even when Superman with other writers started taking on supervillains and aliens and stuff, I think there was an essential goodness to this character. I mean, well, all these powers, he could take over. He could do anything he wants. Most people probably wouldn't, but he doesn't.
Right.
Instead, he assumes a very quiet, low level, meek, mild mannered reporter position, and then saves people in a different costume when he can on the side, expecting nothing in return. And, how can you not love somebody like that?
Did writing the book give you a deeper appreciation for the man that created, also for the character of Superman? Did you feel closer to it now, something that you've known about since you were a kid?
I do actually. There's the after Superman was a hit in Action Comics, he got his own magazine the following year, Superman #1, and in that issue, there's a little bio of Jerry and Joe, and I think it's really telling that in Jerry's, he says he's done this, that, and the other thing, but he loves Superman best because he really believes in the principles. And I get what he's talking about. And people might think, oh, it's a comic book. That's so silly. But no, the fundamental principles, the idea that this guy is a symbol of hope, that he does good for others, not because there's anything in it for him, but just because he wants to, as later writers would develop, because he grew up on a farm in Kansas with Ma and Pa Kent, and they taught him to be a good boy. So that's what he tries to do.
Exactly. Did you try to do that when you were a kid too?
Probably not so much when I was a kid. But I try a little, you try and help out when you can, but I'm not sure I
All I
was.
know is this year's pollen is the equivalent to kryptonite.
Is that right?
But
My
also,
kryptonite is pizza, but whatever.
oh yeah. Well, we're here in the New York area on the East Coast.
That's the best.
Kids also need heroes. They need these characters. Everybody needs a hero. Everybody needs a mentor, somebody to look up to. And so many kids, generations of kids, and now adults who are still kids, but just wearing adult clothing, like all of us. Spider-Man and Batman and Superman and all of these characters and figures. It means a lot. And do you feel, I mean, when we were watching these shows and the comic books and the movies and the different things, this was huge. Kids wanted to be an astronaut. They wanted to be, a superhero, what have you. Do you think that is still potent for kids today while they're on social media and video games, and the attention span has shortened significantly versus watching, a whole series of shows or what have you? Do you feel, I feel it's still relevant and very important,
Yeah, I
relevant.
agree. I mean, comic books, or you assemble several in one thing and call it a graphic novel, but it's basically the same thing. And they're more popular than they've been for decades. Go into a bookstore, you'll probably find several aisles of graphic novels. I've talked to people who told me, I got my whole sense of ethics or morals from comic books, my sense of right and wrong. So a writer named J. Michael Straczynski, who's written a marvelous memoir called Becoming Superman, in which he writes about how reading Superman, loving Superman, being inspired by him, helped him get past a really tough childhood. I think we love heroes, and Superman is the latest and the great. I know Batman is more popular now because Gen Z seems to like, a darker approach, but I think those kinds of things come and go. Look at classic literature. I mean, what are all the oldest works of fiction that have survived to us in the Western tradition? We've got Beowulf, Gilgamesh, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid. What do all those have in common? They're all basically Superman stories. They're all stories about some super mighty, powerful warrior who takes on bad guys, or Grendel or Grendel's mother or whatever, saves other people because that's what makes him a hero. I think people love these kinds of stories. I think they're inspired by them and thrilled by them. And Superman is the first superhero, but in a way, he's sort of the latest iteration of an old concept, and one we really respond to, I think.
And we can't forget Underdog.
Yes, right.
And Polly Purebred
is a parody of Superman, which apparently there was some early thought about suing over, but somebody talked about, come on, it's a parody, just leave it alone. It's fun.
Exactly. Right.
There's no need to fear. Underdog is
here.
Yeah.
You're right. And that and I guess Polly Purebred would be like the Lois in a way, sort of, right? Yeah.
I think, wasn't she a reporter?
Yeah.
Let's say she was. I don't really remember.
Polly Purebred.
Yes.
It's funny. It's so what's coming up next? This is now, but what are you working on next? What are you constantly writing, constantly creating, constantly digging and researching?
Funny you should ask.
He's immersed in microfiche, if anybody even
Yeah.
knows what that is anymore.
Boy, even I haven't, I mean, I saw it when I was a kid, but I haven't seen any microfiche lately. Everything's scanned and digital now, which is nice. There were cases where, a library on another part of the world had some information I wanted to look at, but they could scan it for me and email it, so I didn't have to make a trip. I made a lot of trips, but I didn't have to always. Anyway, what's coming next for me? Well, you probably could have guessed. Next year, it's going to be the Batman Wars, which, uh, if anything, this story about what happened to Batman's true creators, which are not the credited creator, but that story is, I think, even less well known than the story of Superman's creators, and in some ways, even more tragic. But that's next year. Have me back on next year and we'll talk about that.
That is really cool. Now you'll have a cape on then?
Maybe the cowl. Yeah, that might be over the top.
Right. That is fantastic. How long did it take you to write this Spider-Man? Spider-Man. That'll be the third. So follow us.
Could be, actually, because
Could be. There's a story with that too.
Well, with Jack Kirby, yeah, actually, you
Oh,
could start with
wow.
Captain America and then
Right.
lead up
That's
to all
right.
his problems with Stan Lee, but that's another story.
Well, it's similar to a lot of the child actors who are out there now going to
Yes.
conventions and they're making appearances, and we've had a number of them on our show too. And they talk. Everybody thinks that because they were on a particular series that was popular in the 50s and 60s and 70s, that they've made money and continue to make money from it years later. They made money that airing and a couple of airings after. But the 30 to 40 years, 50 years, 60 years for some shows, I think Gilligan's Island is celebrating 60 years, Little House on the Prairie 50 years, which is incredible. There's no residuals happening. That was then. It's all the owners of the shows that are getting the money for the everything that's going on, right? Exactly. Remember, of course, back then too, all the lunch boxes and all of the merchandising that went with everything too, right?
Yes, these characters have turned into huge cash cows that go even beyond, comic books or even TV and movies, things that are based around stories, but just the image, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, those make hundreds of millions of dollars for their owners every year. So Jerry Siegel is basically the child actor in this story. He created something and he got some money in the early days, but it doesn't last forever, especially when there's nothing much new coming in. And so I got to talk to Jerry's daughter, Laura Siegel, and she told me about how she was born in 51, which maybe she doesn't want me to say that. Oh, it's in the book. Anyway, when the George Reeves show, it would come on the television. She said her dad would just leave the room. It was too painful to him to
I could see that. Yeah.
There's my character, but I don't have a credit. Nobody has a credit on it. It's like Superman just spontaneously was generated by this corporation or something, and he just couldn't bear it.
It's sad, isn't it, when you think about it?
Well, I get it because, I have daughters too, and you want to do everything in the world for them.
Yeah.
But Jerry couldn't. He didn't have the means at that time.
It's sad that he couldn't, right?
Yeah.
It's sad that he didn't have the ability to be able to.
Well, he hustled constantly. There's this idea I think some people have that Jerry just did nothing but whine for decades. It's so not true. He hustled, and that's all in the book too. He wrote so many different features and strips and comics, and he was constantly going. He edited for Ziff Davis. He wrote more than 170 stories for Disney comics, like Donald Duck and Huey, Dewey, and Louie. But at that time, you just couldn't make enough money writing comic books to support a family. Nobody could. It wasn't just him. Nobody could. Yeah, and that made it really tough because he wanted to be a writer.
And that was his baby. Yeah, Superman was his baby. If you'd like to learn more about William's incredible work, you can go to his website as well. It's a great website, and you'll see all the different things about him and more about the materials that we're talking about. Fascinating for Superman fans, but just fans of stories like this, going behind the scenes of some of your favorite characters and personalities and entertainment icons. And in this case,
let me just say, Jim, if I may, I apologize for interrupting, but
that's okay.
my mom, who's 97, by the way,
God
and
bless
still
her, huh?
sharp as a tack.
What is her first name?
Theta Wan. I know. Now you'll want me to spell it. THETA space JUAN.
Welcome to the show, and you've got a great son here. He's done
thanks.
good.
But my point was, she is, I can guarantee you, she couldn't care less about comic books, but she's read this book, and she liked it. She may be prejudiced.
You got a thumbs up.
Yeah, but to her, it's a history book, or because she lived through these times, and a biography and a story about a writer who did not get what he deserved to get. And, that's a story that you can benefit from reading, whether you're into comic books or not.
Right, exactly. Well done, really well done. And we encourage folks. Is it also it's on Amazon too, wherever books are sold, right?
Oh my gosh, it held on to its #1 new release flag on Amazon for more than a month. So
that's incredible.
I think that's a good sign.
In the words of John Davidson, that's incredible. He's also
in concert once, but anyway, go ahead.
He's a great guy. Yeah, he runs a venue up in New Hampshire Sandwich, New Hampshire, called Club Sandwich, and he does a whole show there, and it's a retrospective of his career, and he tells jokes and he sings songs, and it's extraordinary. William also has won the Southern Writers Guild Gold Medal Award, the Royden B. Davis Distinguished Author Award, the R.L. Gibson Lifetime Achievement Award, twice won the Oklahoma Book Award, and has been nominated 20 times in 3 categories as well. And in addition to writing, his adventurous spirit has led him to activities like paragliding, surfing, and even, of course, becoming the Jeopardy champion back in 2013. He's got a real passion for storytelling and continuing to shape the literary landscape, and he's our guest here on the Jim Masters Show Celebrity Talk Show series. William, a real pleasure chatting with you and welcoming you to the show. Definitely stay in touch and keep us abreast of upcoming works and things you're doing. And again, if folks want to learn more about WriterCon and the books and so much more, go to the website. Everything is there for you. A pleasure having you on the show. A great conversation. I think we relived elements of our childhoods too, and I know our viewers have as well. Yes. And first time, not the last. We always say we keep the porch light on for all of our guests. So the light is on for you, and I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you, William.
I did. It was a great talk.
The pleasure is all mine. Spread the word about our show and come join us again, okay?
It would be a blast. Next year for Batman. Let's do it.
Batman. Absolutely. I had a Lost in Space robot when I was a kid. My sister had the Family Affair Mrs. Beasley doll. Remember those?
I do. My little sister Karis may have had one too. I know I had one of those robots, and it kind of pivoted and moved.
Yes, and blinked on the top. Danger, Will Robinson, and all that fun stuff. You be well, William, and congratulations on this
again,
and on winning Jeopardy. Pretty cool. You be well. We'll chat again soon. Take care now. Join us again for the Jim Masters Show. We appreciate you being here. Don't forget to love one another. Take care of one another. And do the very same for yourself. We say that all the time. We appreciate your time as well. We'll see you again on the next episode. Coming up next, another great episode of JMS. Stick around for that. Take care and be well. We'll see you soon.